Design is everything. Do you want to find out why design is everything? Well, tune in every Wednesday evening at 6 and listen to the Design Authority. We will discuss products, business, education, retail, and many more aspects of design. That's the Design Authority with me, Dave Nemeth, every Wednesday at 6 p.m. right here on Radio Today, 1485 AM and DSTV channel 869.
The Design Authority every Wednesday at 6 p.m.
Design is everything. Thank you for tuning in. It's Wednesday evening and it's the Design Authority with myself, Dave Nemeth. And we have a very informative show for you this evening. If you are in business or if you are managing a team of salespeople, we're going to cover everything on how to get your business out there. We all know things have changed. We all know that we're living in an age of disruption. And I'm hoping by the end of tonight, with the amazing guest that I have in studio, that you will have new and fresh ideas on how to approach this. We're going to be discussing the art of presenting and the importance of being able to present well. So first and foremost, welcome to the show again. You're quite a regular now.
Thank you, Dave. I love being here. You're welcome to invite me back next week.
We certainly will, because I'm sure we won't get through everything, but we will certainly look at having you back down the line, because as you said to me before the show, you're doing some very interesting things at the moment. And I'd just like to remind you, if you are listening to us or you have friends that aren't sure how to tune in, that we are on DSTV channel 869. And if you want to listen to us on the go, you can simply download the TuneIn app, which is available across all the Apple platforms and Android platforms. So as I said, welcome. Good to have you back.
Thank you so much.
What I'd like to do is, last week we concentrated quite a bit on sales and we went into quite a bit of detail. But I'd like for you to give us a little bit of a recap of the important things in sales. So let's do a bit of a recap of sort of bullet pointed what we discussed last week as a sort of summary, and then we'll go through some of the key aspects that people must remember.
So are we speaking business to business sales now, or business to consumer sales?
Is there going to be a big difference in the approach?
In some ways. So let's start with business to business. Just a few bullet points for the listeners. If you're selling to a business, it's really important to identify the key pain points that the client has. So uncover, what are they really struggling with? They don't care so much about the solution you're providing. They're caring about the outcome that you're providing for them.
Right.
Then it's really important to come up with a core sales strategy. So last week we spoke about who's your avatar client, who's the key people that could benefit or that are actually sitting with that problem or issue. So drawing up a list of potential prospects that you could go see.
And a wish list of these are the guys I'd ideally like to have as clients, and there's a lot of research that's got to go into that. So it's not just a hit and miss.
Definitely. And then allocating it to your different salespeople. So whether it's in certain categories, certain areas that's closer to where they're living, and then to actually have some kind of a matrix which feeds into your sales funnel. So to identify how many calls they should make a day, how many appointments a week they should have, how many interactions with clients.
I think that's very important as well, because I think a lot of companies lose track of this. They don't have a proper system to say, you know what exactly did you do today?
Exactly.
Were you just driving around? Oh, I was on the phone all day. Okay, great. Who did you phone? What was the response? Why did you actually contact that person? So that you can actually monitor that there's a science to this. It's not just being done off the cuff.
A client of mine the other day, we were talking about her sales strategy, and she said she's struggling to convert her sales. And as we were discussing our next coaching session, I said to her, how is your strategy in terms of following up with clients, and how often do you follow up with them? And she said she rarely does. So if you look at the stats, only about 3% of sales gets made in the first encounter.
Right.
But almost 80% of salespeople will only contact the client twice. So if you fall in the final, like 10% of salespeople that will contact clients 5 to 10 times, you will get up to 80% of the business.
Interesting. And I know that, I mean, even in my side, in my business, I've got clients that have signed up after a year and a half, 2 years.
Exactly, and that's what you call lag time. A person can be ready to buy right now in 3 weeks, 3 years, or 5 years. You don't know where they are in the process of buying. So you need to keep on educating and creating that need with them until they're ready to buy.
And obviously that's not always a phone call or an email, because people get a little bit irritated with that. It's keeping up the communication. So that can also be done with newsletters, and then the following month to phone them and say, by the way, did you receive that? What do you think of that? So you're not forcing sales, you're just trying to remain top of mind.
Definitely. Even sharing something like this, a podcast of yours, Dave, would definitely help interacting with your clients, giving them valuable information to sign on more business for your company.
Okay, so it's a science, and there needs to be a proper strategy to it.
Definitely.
Salespeople need to be proactive in trying to find that wish list.
Definitely, and what we also discussed last week is that sales also becomes a large management leadership function, actually figuring out what is your strategy going to be in terms of whether you're having a presentation. What do your salespeople say over the phone? What is the educational value you're bringing to the clients? So don't just allow the salespeople to figure it out on their own. It has to be a holistic approach together, maybe workshop based, where you actually decide as a group what you're going to be focusing on. Maybe there's some campaigns or educational value that you can actually go and bring your clients. It's not just the salesperson's responsibility to figure that out on their own.
Okay, another question I have, which we actually didn't speak about last week, but it's just come to mind, is often big companies, they give their salespeople regions, because that's probably the easiest way to handle it. So someone's got this region, someone's got that region. But not everybody is compatible with certain businesses. So maybe management also need to look at the compatibility of people with companies and actually match them up that way. Do you find that that is something that needs to be addressed as well?
Definitely, you could actually look at different categories according to their interests and what they're really passionate about, and maybe even have it on a rotational basis to see if a person's maybe trying out the car industry or another person's trying out a different one, which of those industries relates better to a specific salesperson. So that's where your reviews and customer surveys come in handy to actually almost match the company and the industry to the salesperson. But that's really why salespeople need to be at a company for a longer period of time to actually find their sweet spot and their niche with their clients as well.
I was also going to say to you, surely regardless of how good the salespeople are, because things are constantly changing, there has to be training all the time.
All the time.
And I think very few companies do that. They got, these are our top salespeople, these ones aren't performing, but they don't know why they're not performing, and there's not, things are changing.
I was at a presentation the other day and they spoke about the fourth industrial revolution and how things are changing so much. So if salespeople and companies are not actually going to keep top of mind and actually bringing new solutions and new learning to clients, they will also fall by the wayside. So it has to be a constant process. So even if your company is not offering you training, I have had sales managers, sales directors contacting me where they would pay out of their own pockets and invest in their own training and coaching, even if their company didn't have budget. So don't just wait for your company to make budget available. You could even make use of professional services yourself, and in that way persuade your company to make the investment.
Well, I think that's the thing. If you want to be the top salesperson and your company is still growing and they don't necessarily have that kind of finances, it's up to you to better yourself.
And you're really writing your own paycheck through your commissions, so should you not actually be using a portion of that for ongoing learning?
I couldn't agree more. Any other basics? There's a plan that's needed. Research who you're trying to target. Have a plan from management level. Continually train your staff.
We spoke about your personal brand. So pay attention to what's happening on social media. all of your images on the various platforms? What is the core message that you want to convey? And how do you actually interact with clients, whether it's over LinkedIn, Facebook, any of those platforms?
Correct. And I think for companies, make sure that you have sort of an SLA or some sort of agreement with staff, some document that makes sure they handle themselves in a professional manner. Because the moment they walk out of that door, that person's going to go onto LinkedIn and Facebook and look at that person.
So on Friday, I was doing that event that I told you about last week for SME Warrior, and there was a core focus on sales. And one of the things that we focus on that can be really beneficial is building case studies that showcases that you have the credibility and that you've done the work in the past. So what I made the business owners do is actually find examples where a client had a huge issue. So I was speaking in Game of Thrones methodology. So
Okay.
what
You
is the
mentioned that
winter?
last week, yes.
What's the winter that's coming? If you don't deal with the winter, what's going to happen? The White Walkers is going to come around and kill everyone. And then your solution is finding the dragon glass that can slay the White Walkers so that they can be live. So if a client can look at it, what is the winter that's coming? What if you don't deal with this winter? What is that White Walker? What is that White Walker going to cause to happen? So not dealing with the issue. What are the greater repercussions of not dealing with it? How much is it costing that company? And then how have you solved this for other people? And what was the return of investment? If you can map it out in that way, it will open many doors. So that's just in a snapshot.
Tell me something else as well, because a lot of companies that I speak to at the moment are really battling to find good quality sales staff. They have these interviews and person looks amazing. 3 months down the line, nothing happens. How should you be interviewing and how should you be looking for salespeople?
So specifically in your interviews, you need to give them tests to do and role plays. So actually looking at what kind of hard skills do they need, what kind of soft skills do they need. So if they need to be making phone calls, so if it's a call center environment, you need to actually give them a test where they put in a room and they have to make a physical phone call to you in the other room, and where you're trying out different objections and things like that. If it's a person that actually has to do business-to-business sales, can they prepare something? So maybe come with a product that they solved in the past. Can you maybe give them some information on your product or service? Give them maybe 10 minutes to prepare, give them a scenario and tell them to sell. So you're putting them under fire and then you're actually reviewing them. So you're actually looking at their actual sales ability under fire. So there you could look at things like their confidence, their presentation manner, how quickly can they think on their feet, deal with objections, kind of like the soft skills. How did they build rapport? Did they have any kind of structure in the sale, or did they just immediately go and sell you something versus first uncovering the need, building a relationship, coming with some educational viewpoints versus just pushing a product down your throat?
Sure, like a second-hand car salesman in the past. That game has also changed drastically. And I've come across some insanely good car salesmen in the past couple of years. I mean, in the past it was a totally different game. So they still use that analogy, but even that game has changed. Would you have to look for somebody that's been in the same industry? So you're selling copiers. Would you, traditionally you'd go and try a headhunt or somebody that was selling copiers. But I mean, the industry for salespeople is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. It's not like it was 20 years ago. What is the risk of getting somebody in that has sold a completely different product?
I think sales is a transferable skill.
Right.
And if it's in the same level of, let's almost say, intellectual industry, if the company gives you thorough research and training on that industry to really understand it, and you can shadow a bit, and they have a solid sales process and maybe educational material and all of that, you can very easily transition into selling something else. But sometimes the learning curve can be a little bit steep That's why you need to have set training on that industry, on the products, go out with current salespeople, be face of the objections, all of that. But if someone is really very professional and they have a solid way of selling, building rapport, they're more consultative, and they really buy into your product or service, if they really believe in what you have to sell, that it can be beneficial to the target audience, they can sell that. I really believe that.
What about managing your time? Because I know some of the complaints as well, and it's great to build relationships, and I think that's very important for every single salesperson. But a lot of salespeople get very comfortable, especially if they've got high basics, seeing the same customers regularly, and it becomes a 2-hour chat over coffee. The sales aren't there, but there's this great relationship. Or it's a B2B where it's an order placing function. The client is placing orders, so they're seeing the clients. How important is it that time is monitored and the salespeople themselves actually manage their time properly?
When a salesperson looks at planning their meetings, maybe there needs to be a proper structure in place where they give planning back to management to say, what is the intention of this meeting? Is this to build relationship? Is this to upsell? Is this looking at implementing more different campaigns? What is your intention of going to this meeting? So that should it be more of a relationship building exercise, they need to limit their time, versus where they are also going to be doing product selling and so forth. Something that I found in another industry, and I'm not going to give too much detail because there's inside info I can't give.
Sure.
But in this specific industry, the salespeople were mostly just doing account management, and people were simply just seeing them as drinking tea and coffee or taking their clients for drinks. And what ended up happening is the more technical people in the company ended up having more and more work dumped on them, where they were doing all the proposals because the salespeople supposedly didn't have the knowledge. So my feedback to that client was, should you not be educating the sales department on a technical level so that they can be dealing with the clients, and then when they do the specifications, they can actually bring the technical person that will be doing the work in for final specifications on an agile approach.
Right.
But where their approach was purely sales is a tea and coffee game, and not actually allowing the salespeople to do the work to finally get the deal closed, leaving it on other departments. So you need to have a very clear focus on what's the intention. Do I need to bring other experts in? How are we going to move this deal forward? Maybe actually having a nice CRM system where you're mapping in what was the intention of that meeting, could really help clients with their time management and seeing if they are actually being productive or wasting time, like you're saying.
And I think that's quite important as well, especially for the technical companies, is for that salesperson to know when do they need to bring in the expert in the company along with them, because often that's going to close the deal. And often it's important for the senior management to go along to these meetings as well. If this salesperson is dealing with the CEO or whoever it is, or the managing director, you need to show face if you want to close that deal.
Definitely. And it's even using the right kind of language and speaking on a different level. So if you're selling to an end user, you would use different sales language versus speaking to a manager, speaking to a financial director or a CEO. Everyone has different needs.
Correct.
So actually figuring out, where am I? What do they need to hear that will move their business forward? Not selling from a product or service point of view, but putting yourself in the shoes of the person you're sitting with.
Excellent. Well, I think that pretty much sums up what we discussed last week. Well, I am speaking to Yoke Van Dam. Sorry, my earphones went a bit moggy there, so I wasn't quite sure if I was actually speaking to anybody. We were speaking about sales. We did a recap, and we said that a very important part of this whole process, work in general, not just sales, but communication overall, the importance of being able to present and communicate.
The power of persuasion, yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
The moment a person gets given the opportunity to get onto a stage or even at a networking event, speak, or even in a boardroom scenario, is offered the opportunity to present, everyone sees that person as the expert. So if you as a CEO or manager are shy of presenting, you are losing out on core opportunities, on upping your level of persuasion with core stakeholders in your business. So if you have the ability to present and speak well, you can actually persuade your staff to work better, you can persuade your shareholders, your shares can increase, you can, in a PR crisis situation, actually be able to deal with the media better. And I've seen quite a few lecturers on university levels say they are struggling to connect with the students in the class.